you been looking at the news of the church-wide assembly in Milwaukee? Have you seen what has been going on there? Anybody? Oi. You have? A little bit. Okay, before we get started, wait a minute. Did we elect a new bishop or anything? No, we elected the same old bishop? Okay. That wasn't really what I meant, but in assembly, the assembly declared that the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America is a sanctuary church body. It has done so in reaction to the immigration and border issues that are occurring in our nation right now. And I'm not going to talk about it whether it is the right thing to do or whether we're mixing politics with theology or faith. That isn't my thing today. We can have that conversation, an exchange of information in some other places. Right now, it remains to be seen whether or not, what this means. What does it look like? What are the implications? What's the significance? Those things remain to be seen. I was just thinking about the words themselves. A sanctuary church body. Sanctuary. A holy place. I know a lot of us refer to this room as the sanctuary in a more conventionally designed, architecturally designed church. The sanctuary is the spot where the altar is. Sometimes that's back there, and it has been here too. It is a place that is regarded as a holy of holies in some congregations, in some Lutheran congregations even, but certainly in Orthodoxy, only the priest or the pastor go into that space. Only those people who clean the altar or prepare the sacraments go into that space. Sanctuary, a holy place. It's a destination. It's a place to arrive. And you notice that when we come forward for communion, we come forward to hear. We don't just pass it back in the pews, and other people do. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that in our tradition, we come to the holy space as a group, as a community of faith. It is a destination. A destination. This morning, I would want you to consider with me our faith, our very moving faith, our very fluid faith, our very biblically designed faith, if you want to put it that way. I want you to regard with me this morning with a little bit of discomfiture about the sense of being a destination. Instead today, I want you to think about our faith, that it arises from and it rests in and then it progresses on a different metaphor, not as destination, but as journey. And look at the first two lessons that we saw today. Well, wait, before I even get there. When you and I think about faith, very often when you and I think about faith, we think about it in terms, the actual word, as being a place where we arrive at. A place that grows, a thing within us, a place here, a place here, a place here, where we grow and we are location services, destination. We think of it in terms of belief. We go through confirmation. At the end of that period, people are confirmed in their faith. They have arrived. They have said the right words. They're in that place. And they think of it as a destination because they don't come back. I graduated from church. That has to do with us thinking about this in a destination way. in a destination way. We think that if we have the right principles, we have the right theology, we have the right doctrine, we have the right music, we have the that people will come, will be the destination. Look at the scriptures this morning. Look at the scriptures this morning. Look at the father of three faiths, Abram. God told Abram and Sarah to get up in the 12th chapter, to get up from where they were in Ur of Chaldees and to go. And on the basis of a fantastic promise that God made to them that was as yet unseen, as yet unmaterialized, this promise that he attaches to the words, go from your country, go from your kindred, go from your father's house, go to the land I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. And I will make you a blessing in the world. That's chapter 12. And when we see him today, he has gone. He and Sarah and Lot and Lot's wife, who has no name. Have you ever noticed that? Poor woman's turned to salt and nobody can remember her name. No one knows her name. Go. Today we see them after having gone on their way. If the truth were, in some way, nothing has happened yet. And Abram is standing there and looking up at the stars, and he's wondering, uh-oh, did I just buy a pig in a poke? What? Is there a farmer here that could tell me what that is, by the way? Did I just proceed on the basis of some very airy promise? Did I hear my word? Did I hear God correctly? Did I actually see that right? Or because the only person that is going to be my heir is Eliezer? Be sure to tell him that when he comes back. The only person. After they've gone for God's promise. And where we see them today also is really interesting to take note of. The reason that he's wondering as he ponders the stars and wonders whether or not that's going to be really a fulfilled promise, the thing that's really remarkable is that this is after Sodom and Gomorrah. This is after they've gone into Sodom and Gomorrah. This is after they've been greeted with a lack of hospitality and a desire to have all the men and rape all the women. And I'm wondering if Abraham is not standing there looking at the stars in the sky and wondering if that promise of God to be a great nation and a great blessing and all that was, if they knew that it was going to be that great of a struggle and involve a great many generations of struggle. They have begun to see that to be chosen to be great, to be chosen for God's promise, is not all beer and Skittles. And that's not the candy, people. It's a game. It's not all beer and Skittles. They are on their journey. They haven't arrived. It is where we see them. And when we come to the God, okay, because there, it seems to indicate that what faith is, at least at the very, at some fundamental level, and we do talk about it this way sometimes, as a journey. Something that's never arrived at, something that's always arriving, on the way, in terms of God's Spirit illumination. That's one thing. Is your faith that? Is your faith that? When's the last time that you struggled with something in your faith? Here, I saw some raised eyebrows. Must not have been a while ago. Maybe recently. And every once in a while, do you find yourself, okay, you can confess it here. You can raise your eyebrows, or you can raise your hand, or you can just say, I know she knows. Anybody else, anybody in here that says, that's just for a moment maybe, wondered if the resurrection really happened? Just a little bit. Before it went away. And before it came back again. Faith is a journey. We've never arrived. We've never arrived. That's one thing. Number two, the second lesson is really illuminating about what the writer of Hebrews says about Abram. He says that Abram and Sarah and all the rest of the heroes of the faith proceeded and did what they did and went where they went by faith. Let's just review. By faith, Abram obeyed when he was called out to set for a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. So before there's anything in hand, by faith he set out. By faith he stayed for a time in the land that he had been promised, as in a foreign land, living in tents. That was before he got restless and went into the Negev desert, which the Lord did not tell him to do. By faith, Abram did that. By faith he received the power of procreation, even though he was too old, and Sarah herself was barren. I think about this sometimes. When they left the land of Ur, on the basis of a very strange a sense of call, the promise that this is going to happen. Sarah is barren. They're maybe not as old as they are by the time this story, other stories are told, but she is barren. Their lives cannot be good lives in the midst of their community. Abram would have been encouraged to find somebody else to add to his line, and he did. He had others. But their lives would have been difficult there. How much did that difficulty drive them out? How much of that difficulty might we call the call of God to go to a place of promise? How much of that difficulty may be this sense, this hope, this true sense that God has something better, has for us, a fulfillment of his promises? How much of that might be the case there? All that, and yet what we read in the scripture is, in this passage, or what we interpret from this passage is that Abram and Sarah and all the rest who stepped out in faith, who got on the journey, who were heading towards something, they died without having arrived. Yes, Abram and Sarah had Isaac. That's one kid. That is not a generation after generation after generation. That isn't the kind of fulfillment of the promise that he would be looking forward to. He dies before he sees it. The heroes of the faith died while they're still on the journey. And then I want to say this, because this is what the great message of Hebrews is. They died trusting God fulfills promises. If he told you to get up and go, he will deliver on the things that he has promised. Years ago, I set out to be an inner city pastor years ago. I was in seminary the first week I was there. I thought, I want to do all my teaching parishes, my field education in the inner city. I want to do my internship in the inner city. I want to be called to the inner city. I had a destination in mind. And interestingly enough, I was called to a pretty conventional African-American parish that looked awfully Swedish in everything that it did. It was not inner city, and that was my teaching parish. And interestingly, in my internship, I wasn't called to Gary, I was called to Riverside to be an intern with the Slovak Lutherans. Who ever heard of them anyway? And my first call was to a Slovak Lutheran parish in the inner city. Do you see what I'm saying? You can set your destination. This is true for all of us. You can set your destination, and as well you should. You can make your plans, as well you should. But God will make those plans into a destination, into a journey every step along the way. You can say, this is the kid I am going to raise. This kid is going to grow up, and even though he says he's going to be a policeman or a firefighter or a cowgirl, okay, that's what I wanted to be. How many times that is going to change in their life? How many people do you know that turned out to be doing the thing they set out to do in the first place? Besides my cousin Michael, who always wanted to be an electrician, and he's an electrician. How many people do you know? God intervenes because our life in faith is not just grabbing these principles, hugging them close to our chest, and making them work for us. Our faith, our life in faith, is a journey in which God continues to turn us and direct us and guide us and mold us and shape us and redeem us and make us blessings to others. It's on the way that happens. Not to when we get there. Not to when we have it all. And you know what? That's how we give sometimes, isn't it? You know, when I make a little bit more money, I'm going to give more to the church. Have you ever noticed that you never make a little bit more money? Yes, you do, but you know what I'm talking about. Every time we make more money, we have more things we need to buy for our children, for the future, for solidification. Even in our giving, our faith is a journey. Our faith is a journey. So today I want to say to you to think about your faith and to think about the faith in this fashion. And I'm going to borrow a few words from somebody I read this week that I thought was just fabulous. Her name's Debbie Thomas, by the way. She says, faith is not a destination or a conclusion or a form of closure. It is a longing. Remember last week when we talked about wanting more? She says faith is a longing, a yearning, a hunger, a desire. A desire. I don't know what it will mean for the ELCA to be a sanctuary church body. I do not know. I don't think anybody knows that yet. What it's going to look like, what it's going to be. But at its very heart, it starts with a desire, with a yearning, with a longing that people, all people in our land, whether they are here legally or illegally by virtue of immigration status, that they will be held and loved and accompanied in their journey wherever that journey takes them. That's our journey. I think that's the desire of making that particular statement. Now, whatever it turns out to be, I don't know. But I think that's the desire of the faith, the yearning, the longing that all people will find a home and safety. I think that is something of the nature of putting that move together. Faith is that. And you know what faith is not? For just a moment, consider that faith is not apathy. When you get up in the morning and you look at the news, and some of us go, oh, I can't look at that today, I'm going to turn it off. But some of us go on and watch it in despair. But as we do so, might we observe it, receive it with the faith that we have been given. That God hasn't abandoned anybody, any one side or another, or the nation or the world, but that God is still walking with us as we stumble through the kinds of movements that we would like to make for the better of our people, our nation, and the people in the world. That God is still accompanying because God fulfills his promises. It is not good enough to be apathetic about that. It's not good enough to be apathetic about the suffering of the world no matter where it takes place. It is not good enough. It is not faith to resign ourselves to how things are. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard that? Have you ever said that to yourself? Well, that's just the way it is. At the very least, if we cannot move in our own personal being on any issue anywhere, at the very least we can pray. Not turn our heads away, not be afraid to look, not give the appearance of not caring or not caring. This should never be the position of a Christian. La, 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 la. That should never be the position of a Christian. Our God heard the cries of his people when they were in slavery in Egypt. Our God heard the cries of his people when they were in slavery to sin. Our God heard our cries when we were alone and without help and without salvation. Our God heard our cries, all of them, and led his people forth to freedom. Back then and now and daily, our God fulfills his promises. One last thing I want to say. As Abram looked up at the sky and looked at the stars and wondered, will this ever become a fulfilled promise? Will this ever happen? Have we bought a pig in a poke? When he looked up in the sky, we can look back and we can say, Abraham, this is a fulfilled promise. For not only the Jews that come from your line, but also all of Christianity and also all of Islam, that there would be miracles. See, that's not what any of us would have expected, is it? It would only be us and not them. But it's all of us. Because when God makes a promise, God fulfills it wildly. When he leads us out, he leads us on. So with that, let's rise and let's sing. We've come this far by faith.